cruise ship cabins can look identical on paper, cost completely different amounts, and deliver experiences that are like night and day. One will feel like you cracked the cruising code. The other will quietly ruin your sleep, your views, and your entire daily rhythm on board. And here's what drives me crazy. This keeps happening because there's something that deck plans don't warn you about clearly, something I learned the hard way on a ship that's less than 3 years old. I'll show you exactly what that is and how to spot it, but first, we need to talk about the biggest gamble in cruising, the stateroom that you choose. Hi, I'm Melissa, a university professor who loves to cruise and who loves to talk ship. So let's talk about the situation that happens when cheap cruises become expensive. When you book a cruise, you'll see two big options straight out of the gate. One is choose your own cabin, or I like to call it choose your own adventure. And these are your GTY, or your guarantee cabins. So here's what that actually means. I cruised for a really long time before I fully understood it myself. Now, choosing your own cabin means you get to pick the exact stateroom that you want among open available inventory. You know exactly where it is. You can study what's above you, below you, beside you. You have control. A GTY stateroom means that you're guaranteed a stateroom in a certain category, but not a location. In this case, the cruise line is going to assign your actual cabin later, sometimes weeks later, and sometimes days before you sail. And if you're a big planner like me, you get a little angsty if you don't have that assignment and you're coming up to sail date and you don't have a room. Well, you're going to have a room, usually. Once on a blue moon, a cruise ship oversells, and if you end up with a GTY cabin, you're amongst the list of people who could potentially get kicked off. It's very rare, but it does happen. But there are upsides and benefits of GTY cabins. The main one, they're usually cheaper. And occasionally, very occasionally, people get really lucky. And when they book a GTY stateroom, they land in a better spot or even a higher category. So a GTY cabin says you'll have a stateroom in this category and possibly better, but that is pretty rare, but it does happen. But the trade-off is you're giving up control over one of the most important variables of your cruise, the location of your room. Now, if you're flexible and you're not sensitive to noise or motion, you're gonna be out partying all night, so you don't really care about sounds because you're not in your room anyway, a GTY stateroom can absolutely work. But if you care about sleep, you spend quite a bit of time in your room, you care about views, if you care about predictability, choosing your own cabin is almost always going to be the smarter move. It's just gonna cost you more. And once you choose, deck plans become essential, which brings me to a problem most people never see coming. And this is when deck plans lie to you. Deck plans are not optional homework. You should always pull them before booking. That is if you're picking your own stateroom. Again, if you have a GTY room, don't even bother because you're gonna get what you get. And like I say with my kids, get what you get, you don't throw a fit. So when you are booking your own room, you're not getting a GTY category, you're picking your own room. The first job is simple. Look on the deck plan, see what is above and below your cabin. Cabins above cabins and below cabins, that's usually your sweet spot. That's usually pretty quiet. And look what's beside your stateroom too. And also avoid adjoining rooms unless it's for your actual use of both rooms, because those doors offer very little sound barrier and you can hear everything in the other room. The thing you want to avoid here when you're looking at the deck plan are cabins that are above and especially below public spaces. Things like pools, buffets, gyms, outdoor decks, theaters, definitely nightclubs, even the galleys, all of these can introduce noise and sometimes at odd hours. And you especially can be prone to hearing things like furniture movement, and that matters a lot with one particular location. And we'll get to that nightmare in a minute, and I'll tell you that one's from personal experience. But here's the thing, deck plans, they are marketing tools. They're put out by the cruise line. They're meant to show categories and layouts. They do not show structural features or visual obstructions that change how a cabin actually feels. And the biggest offender are obstructed balconies. Now, sometimes obstructed balconies, they're very clearly labeled. You think if you're booking a cruise stateroom with a balcony, you expect that you're gonna be able to see all around you, right? Not just out, up, down, right, left, all around. Now, if there is a major obstruction, these are generally clearly labeled. Think things like lifeboats, equipment, stuff like that, fair enough. But the hang up and the trick and where cruise lines will get you, I also learned this from experience, is when obstructions are not labeled at all, or you book a stateroom that is not marked in any way as being obstructed. You do your due diligence, you look at the deck plan, there's nothing that indicates there's an obstruction. And I will tell you my situation and how I got caught up into this myself. Last year, I booked my annual birthday cruise. I go on Carnival Mardi Gras. I booked a suite. I had a casino offer, so it was a freebie because I wouldn't be paying for that because I ball on a budget. By the way, if you want to learn about free casino cruises, I have a guide. I'll drop that down below if you want to check it out. By the way, it's not really free, it's free casino cruises, but I explain all that. Anyway, I digress. I looked at the deck plan, did my homework, it showed nothing unusual. Get on my cruise, go to my room, I'm super excited. I have a suite, which is very rare for me, and I immediately had disappointment when I stepped out onto the balcony because there was this massive, I'm talking huge white awning directly below and in front of my balcony. Now, of course, I could obviously still see the ocean out to the front, to the right, and the left, but it did completely alter my view, especially obviously downward, and my experience. I could see nothing down. So I didn't get to enjoy my favorite port day activity, which is watching for pier runners, which are the people that are late back to the ship, completely block that view. I couldn't look down and look for flying silverfish and dolphins or whales or anything down in the ocean because it completely blocked it. And it also ruined all of those pretty balcony Instagram worthy photo shoots that we sometimes do on our balconies. So if you are booking a Carnival Excel class ship, Mardi Gras, Celebration, or Jubilee, you gotta know this, because if you look at the deck plan, it's not going to tell you. So what will tell you? How could this have been avoided? Well, it's a social media hack that could save you, especially in this case. Before you book any balcony or suite, obviously look at the deck plan. But remember, deck plan doesn't tell you everything. The other important thing is to search that ship and cabin category and location on YouTube and social media. Every time I take a cruise, I always try to do a short stateroom walkthrough. I put the cruise line, the cruise ship, and the specific stateroom cabin number so people can search for that and see an actual video of the room. So people that do this and post to YouTube, God bless you all, because you're doing a service for humanity. This is where people are posting real walkthroughs. And these videos will sometimes reveal to you what deck plans do not. Things like awning overhangs, partial shade. I've also had an ocean view that actually looks out onto a walkway. So there was zero privacy. I couldn't even open my curtain because I had people just looking into my room. I probably would have preferred just an interior. And also balconies can be smaller than expected or awkwardly oriented. So if you can find your exact cabin number where someone has done one of these videos, that's amazing. Now there are a lot of cabin staterooms out there, so chances are good you're not going to find your precise exact stateroom. So if that's the case, look for nearby cabins, or at least those that are in the same deck, the same category, same location. And this one step can save you a lot of disappointment. So trust the video, not just the deck plan. Now let's talk about something that sounds convenient until it becomes your own worst enemy. And that is the Lido deck trap. Cabins directly below the Lido deck are actually terrible. In fact, I've dealt with some pretty not so ideal staterooms, and probably the one that bothered me the most was this one. And it's not what you think. It's actually not the pool noise during the day, because most of the time during the day, I'm out and about, right? So it doesn't bother me. And if I'm in my room, I'm not sensitive really to noise anyway. But the issue that you don't think about is the furniture movement at night. Because what happens is at night, when those pools shut down, the crew get busy to work. They're dragging, stacking, unstacking, and cleaning at all hours of the night. And that scraping sound, trust me, it travels straight through that ceiling. So my girls and I, we had a cruise once right beneath the Lido deck, and we just heard the scraping all night, and it bothered all three of us. So if sleep matters to you, and for most of us it does, avoid cabins directly under pools, buffets, and outdoor seating. You also need to watch for designated smoking areas. And I don't just mean passenger smoking areas, but also crew smoking areas. So especially if you have a balcony and it's near one of those spots, know that smoke is going to drift, and it can ruin your balcony experience even worse than an obstructed view that isn't marked as such. And even if you have an ocean view or an interior, if you're especially sensitive to smoke, know that with ventilation systems that you can still sometimes smell the smoke. So you want to avoid rooms directly above casinos if they're smoking casinos, and consider that in your room selection as well. Now, deck plans rarely make these areas obvious, but they do matter far more than cabin square footage. I would far prefer, personally, a smaller stateroom cabin that has an amazing view, that's quiet, that is not near smoking areas. Now let's shift to the motion of the ocean, because this is where people get the advice completely backward. There is a huge misconception that higher decks, when stateroom selection comes into play, are always better. They are not. Higher decks, they do mean more motion, longer elevator waits, and more congestion. Lower decks do tend to be quieter, more stable, and often more practical. If you get motion sick, in fact, lower midship cabins are your safest bet. So think of a ship like a giant seesaw, right? The ends move the most, and that center tends to stay the most stable. And high deck balconies, they might look appealing, but they amplify motion. And here's something most people overlook. Deck 1 cabins are seen as kind of like the undercarriage of the ship, and people usually don't want them, but they have a major advantage. And in fact, if I have a GTY stateroom, I'm assigned deck 1, I kind of like it because there is a big perk of it, and this especially comes into play on port-heavy itineraries. Think about this. On busy port days, elevators are miserable. Cruise ship elevators are always a pain point, but on port days, you come back, you've had a beach day, you're hot, you're sweaty, you're sandy, you're gross, the kids are screaming, the line to the elevators out of the world, you have the bad cruiser, poor etiquette of people not doing elevator rules. It makes you want to pull your hair out, right? Everyone's trying to get back to their room at the same time. And if you have a room up on deck 15, and even if you're a I'll take the stairs kind of person, I'll get my steps in, you might embark on deck 0. So going up 16 decks if you're on deck 15, especially after a long, tiring port day, it's going to be pretty miserable. So at deck 1, you have, I think, the best spot on the ship on port days. You're right there by the stairs, especially if you're midship. Usually I disembark on midship on port days, and it's so nice to just walk up one little flight of stairs and bam, you are right there. You get to beat the crowds, you get off the ship faster when it's time to debark, and you get to be the first in line, and you can get that post-port day, beach day, nap, and shower ASAP. So in my perspective, practical cabins often make for better cruises. And while it is advisable to avoid really noisy areas, if you are a beach bum, love to be in the sun person, while the Lido deck can be super noisy, don't sleep on those upper rooms near the Lido deck because that puts you really close to the action. Just try not to get a room that's right there, right by the open areas. Now, another thing to consider with ship selection is where all of the action lives on a ship and where you spend most of your time. Now, as I mentioned, if you are a fun in the sun kind of person and you are up partying on the Lido deck and in the pool and you love the buffet, by all means, higher is probably better for you. But every ship has a core where daily life happens that's beyond the Lido deck. Now, usually that's going to be decks 4 through 6. This is where in many ship plans, you're going to find the interior promenades or main dining rooms, casinos, theaters, lounges, stuff like that. The pools are going to be the higher rooms. So I sometimes absolutely love it when I have a stateroom that puts me right there in the center of that action, but not too close because you don't want that noise. So when you cruise and you love the shows, you love the casino, you love the coffee shop, you love the main dining, and you don't go to the buffet much, that's me, I avoid the buffet at all costs. I like a cabin that's located near that hub of action. But again, you just got to consult the deck plan, you got to watch the videos and make sure that you're not going to end up in a noisy location. And that brings us to a decision that is more psychological than people realize, rather than practical. And this is the age-old decision of, is a balcony room worth it compared to an interior room? Now, this one is not just about budget, but it's about how you experience the cruise mentally. I can handle any type of stateroom. In fact, sometimes I like interior rooms because again, after a busy port day, especially a beach day, I want a good shower, I want a good nap. I love how interior cabins get super, super dark. They're kind of cave-like, so they make for some great napping. Now, if you like that, then an interior room can be good for you. It feels cave-like in the best kind of way, especially too if you're light sensitive or you value deep sleep. Interiors, they can be fantastic choices. But balconies offer something different. Obviously, you're getting that fresh air, that natural light, that private outdoor area. So for many cruisers, balconies support their overall cruise experience, their mental health, their mood, and even their sense of space, especially on sea days. So that psychological escape valve matters. If you tend to be claustrophobic and you don't like feeling enclosed, or if you've never taken a cruise before, and I hear this often, even from some of my family that I love that are too scared to cruise because they're afraid of feeling stuck in their room, just pony up the money and go with a balcony. Because beyond the benefits of being able to go out and have your private space, there is that psychological factor you have to consider as well. And for some people, actually, my boyfriend, he loves his sleep. He's a late sleeper. He actually, believe it or not, prefers an interior stateroom. So make sure you consider that factor as well. Now, I do usually cruise with my boyfriend and my family, my friends, whomever, but sometimes I love a good solo cruise. I try to do a solo cruise about once every 18 months just for my own mental health and my relaxation. And there are a lot of perks to solo cruising. I actually have a whole video about it, so check that out. But when it comes to cruising solo, cruising kind of sucks. The math does not math in your favor, and this can change your cruise stateroom decision completely. And this is where we come to the solo cruiser's dilemma. If you cruise solo, you got to understand the single supplement problem. And what this means is that most cruise lines are going to charge you close to basically double occupancy, even though you're one person. And that's frustrating because you feel like you're paying for a second person that's like literally not there. And that means, for example, an interior stateroom that might cost a couple, $1,200, might cost you $1,000 as a solo traveler. Because as a solo traveler, you don't pay port fees and taxes for two, but basically you're paying the occupancy rate for two. So the price difference is really just not great. And again, you are basically supplementing the fact that you're a solo cruiser and you don't have a second person. So you're essentially paying for a ghost roommate. Now, some cruise lines have figured this out. So this is another important consideration when you're looking at cruise staterooms. Norwegian, Royal Caribbean, and some others offer dedicated solo cabins or studio staterooms that are designed specifically for one person. They're going to be smaller, but you are only paying for one person. And here's what makes solo cabins worth it beyond the price. Now, of course, there are two trade-offs here. One, the main trade-off is the solo cabins designed for solo cruisers. They are a hot commodity. They are in very limited supply. They're few and far between. So if you want to cruise without a solo supplement and you want a solo dedicated cabin, you gotta book it really far out because they sell out really fast. The other big trade-off obviously is going to be space. Solo cabins are legit small. I'm talking sometimes like 100 square feet. You're gonna have minimal storage, and if you're someone that overpacks or you need space or you don't want to feel claustrophobic, this can be an issue for you. But if you don't mind feeling a little more closed in, having less space, and you're willing to book pretty far out, you might want to consider trying to snag one of those limited solo cabins. Now let's tackle a word that sounds super exciting, but it's pretty much a bait and a switch. And this is what I call the upgrade trap. Let's be real, I'll be honest with you. The days of the free cruise upgrade, they're pretty much poof gone. Back in the day, if you were a loyal cruiser to a specific cruise line, they would actually call you before your cruise and say, hey, we have maybe suites that are open. You only booked a balcony. Because you are loyal, we will upgrade you to a better room for free. Don't get excited. That doesn't really happen anymore. And cruise lines will try to trick you. They'll send you an upgrade offer that seems exciting on email and you think, oh my gosh, I just won the lottery. But no, that's not really the case. True free upgrades, they do still happen, but they're very, very, very rare. Most so-called upgrades today are more what I call upsells. Basically, you're paying to move cabins. So before you jump on an upgrade offer, always compare the upgrade price to what that cabin would have cost you if you just booked it outright. Because you can't assume you're getting a good deal just because the word upgrade is used. And I have seen some pretty heinous upgrade offers where the price is significantly more than what it would have cost to have just booked that higher room category to begin with. And in fact, if you haven't made final payment yet, or you have flexibility with the fare that you booked, you can sometimes actually reprice your existing booking and get an upgrade for less than the cost by just paying for the upgrade outright versus taking the offer that the cruise line is extending to you. That said, there are some opportunities out there. Sometimes you do get an upgrade or even an upsell offer that is legitimately good. I've taken advantage of these sometimes myself. And I will say too, they do go pretty quick. So if you get an email, don't jump on it right away. First, do your due diligence, make sure it is actually a good deal. Make sure they are actually putting you in a better stateroom category, because Carnival is the worst offender of sending upgrade emails saying higher is always better. And as we've discussed, friends, that is not always the case. So you don't want to pay to end up in a worse room. But I have been able to snag some legit good upsell offers before, and they do go quickly. So after you do your homework, make sure it's a good deal. Don't delay, jump on it because they do go fast. There also is another upgrade opportunity that I think can be worth it. And this is cruise lines like Royal Caribbean and Celebrity that offer bid to upgrade programs like Royal Up. So in this case, there's all the different stateroom categories close to within the category of what you booked. There's a little thermometer. You place a bid of what you're willing to pay to upgrade with a minimum bid that's usually pretty nominal, but it depends on the capacity of that particular sailing and how booked or not that sailing is. And you don't find out usually until closer to your sailing, but if your bid to upgrade is accepted, they automatically charge your credit card for that amount and you do get the upgrade. I've had some great success with this. I've had many failed bids because I do usually bid the minimum or very close to the minimum. So I'm more unsuccessful than I am successful with these, but I have had some luck getting some good deals on legit upgrades. So these can yield real deals, but strategy does matter and it's a little nuanced. There's actually Facebook groups dedicated to like Royal Caribbean's Royal Up program that you can check and learn about the different methods and strategies. But this is where professional help can save you and prevent you from having to do all of this homework. And this is the step that some cruisers miss, and they end up doing all this work and they could have had it done for them at no cost. And that is to use a travel agent. Now, there are some really bad travel agents out there. So you always want to do your homework, make sure you use a travel agent that's actually legitimate and vetted and works with a legitimate host agency. But if you can find a really good travel agent, they're worth their weight in gold. Why? Because experienced travel agents, they know their ship. They know ship layouts. They know the problem areas. They're usually, if they specialize in cruises, they're frequent cruisers that cruise many times a year. They've been on a Carnival Excel ship. They know not to book that set of rooms with that big white awning. They're gonna know things that the average cruiser is not gonna know, even if you do cruise fairly often. They can also evaluate upgrade offers, determine if they're good or not. They can help with the bidding process for things like Royal Up. They can guide cabin selection based on your wants, needs, your psychology, how you actually cruise, what you want, who you're cruising with. There's a whole lot of things that go into this. And again, this is what people don't understand. And I didn't know this for a long time either, and I really missed the proverbial boat with it. I always thought travel agents cost money. They don't. Travel agent provides expert advice at no cost to you. So the cruise lines basically pay a commission to travel agents to book cruises basically for them. So you're getting all this service at no cost. And you might think, okay, well, travel agent fares are jacked up, so I don't want to pay a higher fare. That's not the case. Travel agent rates are exactly the same as the rates that you're going to book direct with the cruise line. So why do all that work when you can have a travel agent basically do it for you at no cost? And another huge perk is that cruise fares, they're variable, they're dynamic. So you can book a cruise today and that price can go down in 2 weeks. But if you're just an average person working your 9-to-5 job and trying to parent kids and run life and do things like that, you're not going to be diligently checking the price every day. But if you have a good travel agent, they will do that for you. They will monitor price. And as long as you're still before final payment, you have flexible fares, stuff like that, they will be proactive in catching these things and getting you a refund. In fact, one of my booking partners just this week repriced 3 different Carnival cruisers, saving them hundreds of dollars. And they never would have had that had they booked themselves. So don't sleep on the value of a travel agent, a good travel agent, not just any travel agent, a good one. But when you find one, grab hold of them tightly because again, they're worth their weight in gold. Now let's talk about one more layer that many people overlook entirely. Now, obviously I'm a seasoned cruiser. I cruise at least once a month and I didn't know this for a long time. It took me an embarrassingly long time to figure this out. In my defense, I typically have cruised certain cruise lines that don't do this. So when I started cruising different lines like MSC, it just didn't dawn on me that there's a difference. And what I'm talking about is when your cabin isn't just a cabin, but it's a category or a class. Now, what I mean by this is some cruise lines, they don't sell just cabins, but they sell experiences. And the clearest example is MSC. And I took maybe 3 MSC cruises before I really started to kind of discern the difference. And this is where having used a travel agent would have been helpful for me back in the day. Now, what I mean by this is that with MSC, they have different types of classes. And their introductory class is Bella. Their preeminent, predominant, very expensive, highest class is the Yacht Club. So you're gonna have a night and day difference if you book a Bella room versus a Yacht Club room. So in this case, if you're cruising with MSC and other cruise lines like Virgin Voyages are starting to dabble in this differentiation of classes type of strategy, but you don't have to just make the decision of, well, do I want an interior or a balcony or midship or low or high? But you also have to consider the class because again, completely different experiences. And with Bella, it's gonna be bare bones basic. With Yacht Club, it's gonna be a ship within a ship, luxury, bougie experience. I'm talking, you get your own butler. Now, I've only done the Bella experience because I ain't paying for that. I've heard Yacht Club is absolutely amazing. Everyone says, oh my God, you gotta do Yacht Club every time I post about MSC. Friends, that ship is expensive. I am not paying that. I ball on a budget. Maybe one day I will, but I just can't justify it. But those of you that can, kudos to you because I've heard it's absolutely amazing. So when you're booking an MSC cruise or you're booking with a line that has different classes, that's another thing you have to consider. And of course, obviously the higher classes are going to be more expensive. But this is where having a seasoned travel agent can help you. And MSC in particular gets really, really complicated. And I actually have a booking partner who specializes in MSC and she knows the stuff like the back of her hand. So if you're interested in booking an MSC cruise or any cruise, I have my booking form linked below. I'll connect you with the expert in that area because this stuff does get really complicated. So in this case, you can say, here's my budget, here's what I'm looking for. And she'll help provide you not just with different stateroom categories, but different classes and help you understand what you get with each, what's worth the money, and what can fit reasonably within your budget. Now, remember that difference that I mentioned at the start. The reason that 2 cabins can look exactly the same on paper, but deliver completely different experiences. Well, it comes down to research and strategy, deck plans, online tours, understanding noise sources, even the unexpected ones like the galleys where the crew operate, motion patterns, daily flow, knowing when to trust the GTY stateroom and when to lock in your exact location. The cruise lines are not gonna hold your hand through this, but now you know what to look for. And that can make the difference between a cabin that you can tolerate and a cabin that makes your entire cruise better. So don't leave your vacation to chance and never trust just the deck plan.